Picture this. It's 1920 in Boston. A sharply dressed man strolls into a bank, not with a gun, not with a business proposal, but with an offer no one can resist. He claims he can double your money in 90 days. No banks involved, no strings attached, just quick, easy returns. And people believe him, not just a few, thousands. They line up around the block, they hand over their life savings, they bring their friends, their neighbors, their co-workers. Some even take out loans just for the chance to get in on it. The man behind it all, Charles Ponzi. He didn't just pull off one of the boldest scams in American history. He became the blueprint for financial fraud. So much so, his name now lives in infamy. This is the story of how one broke immigrant convinced the world he cracked the code to wealth and built an empire of lies on nothing but confidence and paper promises. This is his story. Charles Ponzi was born in 1882 in Lugo, Italy. His family used to be rich, old money, good name, but by the time Charles came along, the wealth was long gone. He grew up surrounded by echoes of privilege, but none of the actual privilege. That gap between perception and reality, it would define his life. Charles dropped out of university in Rome, claiming he was more interested in spending money than learning how to make it. And in 1903, with dreams bigger than his bank account, he boarded a ship to the United States. By the time it docked in Boston, he'd already spent most of the few dollars he had. You see, Charles Ponzi thought he was owed this money and that he wasn't supposed to be a poor lower-class Italian. But what Charles lacked in monetary value, he made up for in the most important sector in business: sales. His early days in America were nothing glamorous. Menial jobs, cramped housing, no real direction. But he watched, he listened, and more importantly, he learned where the cracks in the system were, and he knew he was going to exploit them with the one talent he had. Charles eventually ended up in Montreal, working at Banco Zerosi, a bank that catered to Italian immigrants like himself. The bank promised unusually high returns. Sound familiar? But keep in mind, this wasn't investment genius. It was a scam. The banks was paying old customers with the new deposits from new customers, a small-time Ponzi scheme before Ponzi even had a name. And this is very troublesome because it gives the illusion that your bank is making these big returns, when in reality, you're just taking from Sam to pay Paul. When the bank collapsed, Ponzi forged a check to try and stay afloat. Unsurprisingly, he got caught and got sent to 3 years in a Canadian prison. And that wasn't the end. After his release, he returned to the US, got involved in a smuggling operation where he smuggled Italian immigrants across the border and ended up back behind bars, this time for 2 more years. At this point, most people would have given up. Ponzi didn't, because he wasn't looking to survive. He was looking to win. And luckily for him, his time was coming. In 1919, Ponzi was out of jail, broke again, and living in Boston. But this time, he was sharper, more focused, and hungrier than ever. Still without any real job or money, but with a brain buzzing with ideas. And then, one day, he opened a letter from Spain. Inside was something small, strange, and totally forgettable to most. An international reply coupon, or IRC. You see, an IRC was a voucher you could include in a letter so someone in another country could afford to mail you back. To everyone else, this is pretty dull stuff, but to Charles Ponzi, this was his golden ticket and a one-way shot to the American dream. After some digging, he realized IRCs were priced based on local currency, which was all over the place. That meant he could, in theory, buy cheap IRCs in Europe, redeem them for more expensive US postage, and pocket the difference. The math seemed perfect. It was just arbitrage on a global scale. But Ponzi wasn't interested in logistics. He wasn't going to ship crates of coupons across the ocean. What he was going to do was sell the idea. Something that, up to this point, he had become very good at. In January of 1929, Charles launched the Securities Exchange Company and pitched investors on his plan. He told them he had international deals lined up, that he could turn $100 into $150 in just 45 days. At first, it was small. A few friends, a few $100s. But Ponzi paid them back, exactly on time, with interest, like promised. Word spread like wildfire. Soon the line outside his office wrapped around the block. He brought in $5,000 in a single day, then $10,000, then hundreds of thousands a week. He was pulling in today's equivalent of millions per day. and the money didn't stop coming. None of it came from coupon arbitrage. Almost none of it came from any real business. He was paying early investors with cash from the new ones and keeping the difference. A perfect illusion until it wasn't. With the money came the lifestyle. Ponzi bought a mansion in the suburbs. He wore custom suits, rode in limousines, tipped generously, smoked the best cigars. He was living the fantasy, and selling it too. He gave interviews, smiled for cameras, pitched himself as a working-class immigrant who cracked the system with pure genius. People wanted to believe in him. People did believe in him. Even newspapers praised him at first. The Boston Post called him a financial wizard, and everyone was on his side, from investors to bankers to politicians and even cops. How ironic. But while Ponzi was soaking up the praise, a few people started asking questions. And with that, the first cracks were showing. In the summer of 1920, the Boston Post assigned a reporter by the name of William McMasters to take a closer look at how Charles Ponzi was making his money. He did the math and found a glaring issue, an issue that Ponzi himself was too stupid to see. If Ponzi was really making money off IRCs, he would have had to buy and redeem hundreds of millions of them, more than what existed globally. Investigators eventually contacted postal authorities, and even they had no record of any bulk IRC movements, no unusual redemption spikes, and absolutely nothing to back up Ponzi's story. State officials launched an audit. When they opened the books, they found what most con artists try to hide: chaos. There were no investments, no trades, just money in, money out, on a massive scale. Still, Ponzi played it cool. He gave interviews, claimed it was a smear campaign, said he had secret sources and government enemies. It didn't work. The people knew he was a fraud, the public that once loved him now despised him, and the power that he once had was slowly slipping away. On August 11th, 1920, Ponzi was arrested for mail fraud. By then, the scheme had pulled in over $20 million, the equivalent of about $300 million today. It was one of the largest frauds in U.S. history. 40,000 people lost money. Some lost everything. A few never recovered, financially or emotionally. Ponzi pled guilty and was sentenced to 5 years in federal prison. But he wasn't done yet. Massachusetts filed separate charges against Ponzi. He fought them for years, lost, and served another 9 years behind bars. Following this, immediately after he got out, the U.S. deported him back to Italy. Back in Italy, Ponzi tried to reinvent himself. He pitched shady business ideas, dabbled in more scams, and even claimed he worked for Mussolini's regime, though that's never been confirmed. Eventually, he wound up in Brazil, working as a translator in a shipping company. No wealth, no power, no attention. Ponzi basically was right back where he started, poor, hungry, and alone. But this time, no one would listen. By the late 1940s, he was nearly blind and completely broke, living in a charity hospital in Rio de Janeiro. He died in 1949 with just a few dollars to his name. His last words: "I wish it had all been true, even for just one time." Charles Ponzi didn't invent financial fraud. He didn't even invent the idea of paying off old investors with new money. But what he did do was name it, define it, embody it. A con artist so desperate to make a dollar off the backs of hardworking people that he would sacrifice anything to have it. And that's why every time someone promises a risk-free fortune, offers guaranteed returns, or builds wealth on nothing but charisma, you're not just seeing a scam, you're seeing a Ponzi. And even though the man behind the scheme died with less than $1 to his name still lives in financial infamy for the rest of time.